And yep, I'm gonna have to read. Hello guys and gals, this is me Manbat and
The X. Wait, no, go back.
hello guys and gals, this is me Manbat
The Angry Gorilla.
and today we're reviewing Skyrim, and I know I'm reviewing this again. But this time it'll be a bit more interesting because, well, Angry Gorilla over here really doesn't like this game too much.
Nope, not that much.
So yeah, let's pretty much just get into this game. Oh, and by the way, some more reviews will be coming out. Duke Nukem 3D. And yes, me and Angry Gorilla are both part of a clan. You guys can join. It's Death Wish. I'll probably link it below in the comment in the description. So yeah. And yeah, so let's get started into this review. This game was obviously made by Bethesda, like 2011, if I'm wrong. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay. And yeah, it was made by Bethesda and published by Bethesda.
So who's gonna go first?
I guess, well, I'll go first then. Well, I'm gonna go pretty blunt as far as the story goes. Pretty much, you're about to get executed like almost, well, in almost every Elder Scrolls game I've played anyways. You either start out in a dungeon, or somewhere where you can't really do much. And in this case, you're almost getting executed, but then the dragon comes up, just wrecks everything. And then later in the game, you find out you're Dragonborn. And after that, you learn to shout some crap. And then do some other stuff. And then you fight the boss, and that's pretty much the game. In a nutshell. Oh, and in between that, you get to choose two factions, the Imperials and the Stormcloaks. Personally, I prefer Stormcloaks because the Imperials are just a-holes. But, but gameplay-wise, it's a lot faster than the other Elder. Like Morrowind, combat was really crappy, but everything else was pretty solid about it. And yeah, if you're playing this on the console, you only have the vanilla game, so it's kind of meh at times. The vanilla game ain't so great.
Yeah, I will say that if you're playing on the console version, particularly the PlayStation 3, you won't find as much enjoyment out of it as a PC user, especially because of the modding community. So you might want to get this for cheap on the PC. And even though it had a lot of glitches when it came out, in general, it's fairly well optimized. So even poor systems will be able to play this game on low or medium settings. I should know, I played this game back when I had a single core.
Yeah, and I have a dual core over here, except the graphics card sucks. It's an Intel.
Yeah, I mean, I used to play this when I had a Radeon 480 and a single core Intel chip, and I'm pretty sure I run it at low at about 40 frames per second. So it is a weird situation where the glitches they can be numerous, but the actual optimization is pretty good, which it should be.
Yeah. One thing to note though is its menu screen and your selection screen is more focused on consoles rather than PCs. I've noticed that.
Yeah, it's very awkward, and I really recommend you download a certain mod, I forget what it's called, but to fix it, because it gets very tedious very fast.
Yeah, and as you guys can see on my screen right now, I have that mod. I decided to change it, so yeah.
Yeah, and Oblivion had a lot of problems with its menus, but I think Skyrim is even worse because you can tell when they're creating the menus, they really were catering it to the console market. And Oblivion, it was okay, it was kind of a mediocre menu, but it was really made for both the PC users and the console users. In this game, it's really only for, 360 users and PlayStation 3 users. It's just a bit
I can't
awkward
even keep
in the
track
end.
of all the people who have been in and out.
Yeah,
They come.
like as we were saying, the menu wasn't really set up right and everything, but one thing, like, I noticed with some of the magic spells, some of them are really, really weak. Like, really underpowered.
Well,
And,
okay,
yeah.
so, if you don't mind, can I talk about the story real quick? Or wait, so how do you usually do your reviews? Like, graphics and the gameplay and the story, or what?
I just talk about it all the way. Sometimes I won't even bother with the graphics because how old are the games I play.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm sorry, this is kind of an awkward review. We kind of just stumbled into this.
Yeah, we're just experimenting with this right now.
But basically, in my opinion, since he talked about the gameplay, that is a big problem that the Elder Scrolls series has had for a long time. They've never really been able to balance that well. Sword play and magic play. Actually, they did balance it pretty well in the older titles. But the problem with that was the combat was pretty bad in the older titles, so it almost didn't even matter in the end. And the races were also a huge problem in games like Morrowind, where basically if you're one race, you would dominate the battlefield with a sword. Even in Morrowind, which had the worst combat out of all the games, you would dominate with a sword. And so I'm just waiting for the mages to get a huge buff. As far as long-range combat, like bows and arrows go, there's not really anything special, which is kind of strange because a lot of RPGs tend to use the bow and arrow combat almost as a different mechanic. You know, so like there's sword play, magic play, and then bow and arrow play. But in this game, it's almost unutilized because you can like upgrade your skills with it, but it's almost just like a melee weapon with long-range capabilities, if that makes sense. There's not really anything special about it, it's just bows and arrows. So obviously if you want to get fun out of this game, use swords and maybe some magic here and there. I mean, that's just how I feel. How do you feel, Seth?
Well, okay. Yeah, I agree. Using swords and arrows is probably the best, because I feel like magic's weak, but it looks kind of cool. It looks cool, but it's just crappy.
And it doesn't make sense either, because the most promoted feature in this game, if you're talking about the lore of the game, which is the backstory, it's technically a magic feature. Dragon Shouts, which was the whole point of this entire game, is magic. But when you look at other sources of magic like fire and necromancy, it's just not as cool as the shouts. So there's basically one form of magic in this game that's not underpowered, and it happens to be the source of magic that anyone can use. So it's really awkward how they implemented it in this game.
And okay, I guess we'll talk about the graphics now.
Yeah.
They're actually pretty good for an open world game, because you gotta admit, open world games, they can't do as much as, like, say, a corridor shooter, where since it's more compact, you can fit a lot more details around. And for at the time, this game actually does a pretty good job, but now it kind of looks a bit kind of crappy. So you just put a couple mods on it for the PC, you're good. If you're on the console, sucks for you.
Yeah, I have to admit, when this first was coming out, I saw trailers and I'm like, why do people keep saying this is the best looking game of 2011? It doesn't look that good. But now that I'm a bit older and a bit more mature, I understand that having an open world game that looks this beautiful is really a technical achievement. And you have to understand that when this was coming out, it wasn't really the end of the console's life cycle. There were 2 more years to go before the 360 and PlayStation 3 were ending their life cycle. And those 2 years could have meant a lot. I mean, they could have really had better graphics in those 2 years. So, like, while I think the graphics are a bit overrated, they aren't as good as people make them out to be. In general, they're really beautiful, especially for a 360, PlayStation 3, and PC game.
Okay, and another thing I would at least like to mention is how, like, if you want to talk about bad launches, particularly in this game, the PC and the Xbox was pretty fine and dandy, but oh god, the PS3, what a mess that was.
I know, the PlayStation 3 version was downright terrible. And I'm pretty pissed that the developers are already working on other projects like Fallout 4, which really they've been working on it for a long time. But they're obviously putting loads of money into it now that they don't have any other games. They also are working on the Elder Scrolls Online, which is already released but is getting numerous updates. So why have they failed to launch the PlayStation 3 DLC and fix the PlayStation 3 version? I'm sorry, but there's really no excuse. Bethesda has always been a company that favors Microsoft, and Western development teams, and the fact that they're excluding the PlayStation 3 is really just bad. It's not the worst port they've done. I think Oblivion might be a worse PlayStation 3 port. They're kind of tied. But the fact is they've had 3 games published by Bethesda that have just come out as terrible ports on the PlayStation 3. And 4 games using the Bethesda engine, if you're counting Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, okay. Oh crap! And like as far as like the models go, what do you think? Like personally, me, some of the models look really great. Others just kind of Like the Giants, I felt like they could have been worked a bit more on.
It's a weird situation because the armor is pretty good, but the character models in general suck. I don't think there was a single character in this game that had a good model. And part of the problem is the animations and the models. Bethesda has always done both of these really badly. I will admit the models are a lot better in this game than Oblivion. If I had to pick between the two, I think that the animations in this game are a lot worse than the models, because sometimes you'll look at people swinging their swords and it just looks terribly funny. But yeah, the models really aren't that good. Stuff like plates of armor or dragons looks amazing, and saber-toothed tigers and all that. But when it comes to the actual people you'll interact with, which is one of the most important parts in an RPG, it looks pretty bad.
You know, I'm gonna say this. I think Pokemon makes it looks a lot better, and that's saying a lot.
Well, yeah.
And that's like, well, it depends which one you look at. Even at the older ones, all it is just a text bubble, and it looks better.
You know, I really don't like Skyrim that much, as people can tell, but I gotta say that that's kind of an unfair comparison. I mean, first of all, Pokemon's a Nintendo published game. Nintendo are notorious for making sure their games are 100% polished before release. Whereas, you know, Bethesda's a huge company, and they're making a Western RPG on consoles that are 9 years old. And you probably noticed that I keep bringing up consoles, even though this is a PC game for the most part.
It still matters.
Yeah, it really does matter the most when you look at the console version. Not because it's the best version, because believe me, it's not. But it really shows why stuff like the graphics in this game aren't really highlights. It's because they're running on 9-year-old console hardware. I mean, there's nothing else to say.
And one thing I hate about modern gaming is how PC ports, and okay, this one's actually a pretty good PC port, but for other games, are crap. And it's because they're more optimized for the consoles, because the building's these for the consoles, so the graphics might not even look as good. It might look exactly the same, slightly a bit better. That's if the developer even puts an effort on the PC port.
Well, that's a good point, but I wouldn't worry about that, because especially Western RPG developers, they almost always care more about the PC version than the Xbox or 360 or Xbox and PlayStation version. And really, another thing you have to consider is that ever since the original Xbox, not Xbox One, I'm talking about the original one from 2000.
Unless you're like a little kid or something.
Yeah, Xbox Uno. Ever since the original Xbox's hardware has been a lot like a PC, and with each iteration of the Xbox, it's been more like a PC than the last. So that really explains why the optimization is so good on the 360 and PC version, yet so bad on the PlayStation 3 version.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that, like, okay, even though I know people say, like, developers who complain about the PS3's hardware, and it being hard to work with and stuff, the PS3.
Yeah.
You see games like Last of Us and stuff that can prove that if you actually try, you can make the game look pretty damn pretty.
And I think something that's worth mentioning is, I know a lot of people are probably going to say, well, that assumes this is going to get a lot of views, but no offense, Seth. I don't even have my channel ready, but the thing you have to remember is that a lot of people are going to be like, well, the PlayStation 3 wasn't successful for 4 to 5 years after its release, so why would they develop it for the PlayStation 3? you have to understand that this game released 2 or 3 years after the PlayStation 3 started earning Sony a profit, so that's not an excuse. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I know. Yeah.
They could have, and this game was in development for longer than when the PlayStation 3 was even announced, probably. I mean, because the PlayStation 3 was debuted in 2006.
Yeah, I know. But like they could have. They really had the hardware intel
Yeah.
and everything. They could have gotten this just fine. They had all the specs. It's not like anything was missing.
Now, I will say it's a bit unfair to compare this company to like Naughty Dog, just because Naughty Dog is, I believe, a first-party company, which means they work solely for Nintendo. So,
Not Nintendo. I mean Sony.
I mean, yeah, Sony. Sorry about that, but they work solely for Sony, so obviously they know the hardware a lot more than most third-party developers.
Yeah.
But still, they could have done a much better job. It's kind
Like
of
for example, here's a port of a game that was on the PC. It is recent, so yeah. Wolfenstein New Order. I swear that game runs really smoothly. I had no glitches when playing on the PS3 whatsoever. Perfect port,
Yeah.
just about. Controls felt right, everything. See, if you take your time on the port and developing it for that port, it can look nice. Or like even, wow. Trying to think of another game port. Or like even the Batman games, like the Arkham City, ran fine on my PS3, no problem. You know,
Yeah.
like, if you take time, it'll be good.
Yeah, and Arkham City came out the same exact year. Like, when you mentioned Wolfenstein, I was like, well, that came out about 3 or 4 years after. But Arkham City came out the same exact year, so there's no excuse.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you could say that Skyrim is a much bigger game,
Yeah.
but Arkham City's a better looking game, and it's fairly big too,
Yeah.
so
Or-
there's really no excuse
And I
either
could
way.
compare this Far Cry 3 as well. That came out a year later, but still, looked better because, well, one, it came out a year later.
Yeah. But it came
oh.
out pretty early in 2012,
Yeah,
wasn't
it
it? Like really early fall or summer? I think
it was somewhere around
it
there.
was between summer and fall. It was like it was September, I think.
Yeah, I didn't play that game until like I think 2013.
No, I played it late 2012, like during Christmas. So this is the second anniversary of playing Far Cry 3, I guess. But, I remember I plopped that in on Christmas Day, just kept playing it. My uncle's like, "What are you playing?" And I'm like, I didn't want to tell him because he probably played the game before.
Yeah. You know what?
Far-
Christmas of 2012, I was playing Dishonored.
Oh, dude.
Oh,
Now
this game's
that's
awesome.
a good Bethesda, but that's published by Bethesda. That's not made by Bethesda.
Yeah,
so-
it's published, but the team who worked on it, some of the people actually worked with
Yeah.
Looking Glass,
yeah.
with the Thief series, so it was polished.
I haven't played the Thief series, but anyways, back on point. Let's talk about the story because we already talked about the gameplay.
Yeah, and we talked a bit about the story briefly.
And
Now-
really, let's face it, this is more like a rant than a review almost.
Yeah,
So
it's alright.
It's really okay if we go back and forth.
Yeah.
And me and Seth really don't agree that much. Like, Seth is a really big fan of this game, and I'm obviously not. A
I'm
huge
not a
fan.
too big fan anymore.
Yeah,
like,
but
my opinion's changed because, guys, go play System Shock right now if you haven't.
Yeah.
That game kind of changed my perception on, like, Western RPGs together. Just, like, wow. But anyway, to get back on point of the story.
yeah. So you were summarizing the story pretty
Bluntly.
bluntly.
Yeah.
I was gonna say generic, but that was that would have been rude. Yeah. So basically, my biggest problem with the story is that it sounds epic on paper, but in execution, it's not. It's also a very sloppy story that feels very rushed. Just to give you an example, even some of the biggest YouTubers cringe at the line in the game where it's like, but he's not on this list, and the girl's just like, who cares? Let's kill him anyways. It's like, do you really have any better writers? You're one of the biggest companies of all time, and you can't hire people who know what they're talking about.
And okay, like, that part, I hate going through that and starting a new character because that takes forever.
It does. It's so annoying. And, you know, I will admit, I don't hate that as much as the Oblivion section.
Yeah, because in Oblivion, at least once you get your character set up and everything, you get out immediately, and then there's some crap you have to do.
Well, that's the
right.
thing. I hate the Oblivion section more just because I really hate Oblivion a lot more than Skyrim. But I think this version of the game is forced down your throat a lot more.
Yeah.
Like in Oblivion, it's just you're gonna help the king along the way, and then you'll earn your freedom by doing that, which makes sense. But in this one, it's like, oh no, watch out, the dragon! Hey, you have to follow me for some reason. And it's just so linear. You shouldn't start a game off, an RPG especially, by making it so that each time you go through the game, it's a 30-minute linear section that has nothing to do with the rest of the game. I mean, it basically just lets you become free, which really, why did you have to be a prisoner in the first place?
It seems like it's a Bethesda tradition to do that.
It's kind of more like a fetish.
A prison fetish.
Did you watch that Angry Joe Show review?
Which one was that? Forget.
He's like, and you started as a prisoner again.
Oh,
I swear,
yes.
but someone at Bethesda has a prison fetish.
I haven't seen that review in like so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's my most watched review of his, because Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim was actually the game that got me into RPGs. It really did. It was one of the stepping stones, the game that really got me into games in a hardcore fashion. You know, instead of playing for 30 minutes and then getting off and not playing the rest of the day.
Yeah.
It was really one of the games that made me stay glued to my monitor. But nowadays, I've played so much more games and I just don't like the mechanics. So that should really tell you how unbiased I am. Like, this is purely objectification.
And me, like, on here, personally, Skyrim, I loved it. Now I don't, because I've played other games. I personally fight. I really like fast-paced games. And if I do play an RPG, I have a tendency of liking JRPGs better.
Hey Seth, can you hear that music in the background?
No.
Okay, good.
And it's probably because the reason how I even got into RPGs was through JRPGs, so I have a bit more background on that.
Yeah, I got into RPGs with Western RPGs. Like, my first was Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, and then it was Fallout 3, and then I regretted buying Fallout 3, so I bought New Vegas. I loved New Vegas, or actually it was Skyrim, and then Oblivion, and then Morrowind, and then Fallout 3, and then Fallout New Vegas. So yeah, I grew up more on Western RPGs, but I first grew up on tabletops, so I'm kind of old school.
Yeah, because me, like my first Western, not Western, JRPG was actually Pokemon Fire Red when I was like a little yay little kid on my Game Boy Advance. That was like the best game ever. So years later, when the DS comes around, I remember I got a DS Lite, and then I think I got Pokemon Diamond on there, playing that for hours. Then I got for Christmas one year, I think. Christmas or my birthday, can't remember which. But I got Pokemon Pearl, and sometime I pre-ordered Platinum, got that, and then I've been hooked on that Pokemon series since then. And Skyrim probably got me hooked even more because, God, there's been so many times I've been not hooked off the screen on this game.
Yeah.
Playing.
Sorry to interrupt, but technically, if you consider Japanese RPGs as legitimate RPGs, I did start with Pokemon first, but I really kind of sucked at it because I always forgot to get the gems. And so it was so annoying I couldn't progress the rest. But yeah, like, JRPGs are just so different from Western RPGs. I don't even consider them RPGs. They're almost like action-adventure games with RPG elements. And I'm not saying that like to make fun of them. JRPGs are really good.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the truth, like, because games or RPG games are supposed to be like non-linear games where you have multiple choices to make and multiple roads to go down, and you affect the storyline, the game, and the game world. And JRPGs almost never do that.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. Definitely.
Yeah, they're not even RPGs. They're just basically action-adventure games with strategy elements and RPG elements.
You gotta admit, like, even like Skyrim. Okay, Fallout actually can get like multiple endings, I believe, or like different outcomes because of what you did. And Skyrim, I really don't see that happening.
Yeah, well, that's what's weird about Skyrim is its story itself is linear, but there's so many ways you can affect the world around you in the side quest that I'd have to say it is a legitimate RPG. It is a Western RPG, but I know what you're about to say.
Yeah.
Like, because in Fallout 3 you can choose 2 different sides, but you can't in Skyrim. And it's weird too, because the beginning of the game sets it up so that you realize there's 2 different sides to this world, the Stormcloak
And the
or the Imperials, but it doesn't matter who you go with.
Yeah.
In fact, it's not even connected to the story except for one specific part, and it only lasts a few minutes, and it doesn't matter what side you're on, no matter what. Like, it's a really bad way to start a game if you're gonna put a completely irrelevant option in the beginning of the game. It's just kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Like you were saying, like, it's just personal preference, really, when you get down to it. It's if you prefer the a-holes or the guys who are actually pretty cool and for the most part, ideals are actually better. And it's just all up to personal preference there. It doesn't impact the game whatsoever. It's so many games have done something like this better, had actually implemented it. Like Fallout, you know, well, Fallout 3, but another Bethesda game. But anyways, and yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we'll get to the gist of it. It's a good game, but it has its flaws. Or a decent game, depending on how you are. I mean, if you want to play a really good Bethesda game, just go buy Morrowind. You can find it at like a thrift store, pawn shop somewhere. I know I can. And or even a local game store. They might have it.
Well,
or get the PC version, which is the best. Any PC can run it now.
Yeah, it's on Steam.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the game for a bit longer?
Yeah,
if you don't mind, just because I know it's probably eating away your gigabytes, but
yeah.
one, tell me if I need to stop, because seriously, I can't
really tell how many gigabytes it's taking. I know it keeps freezing every once in a while, which means it's recording the next section.
But so I wanted to talk about the story because I think there's something really interesting about this game that I really wish Bethesda would acknowledge. Now, Bethesda's always been better at crafting worlds than making stories in worlds, and I think with Skyrim, you know, let's just put it this way. When I was 11, I figured out that this game really needed better writers. And then I started delving into the lore of the game, you know, reading the books and checking out all the different side quests. And I realized that those elements of the game were written so much better than the main story. I almost wish the main story was written by the people who made the lore. Because there is this one really cool quest where you have to, you know, go into this ancient cavern and fight this king. And it was really cool for me because I hadn't unlocked this quest until I went into the cavern, you know, because I was just stumbling around. And so I found the cavern, I killed this king, and then I picked up the quest, and everything I learned about the quest after killing this king that was really hard to fight, it was just so interesting. So I don't know why they hired the best writers for the lore of the game, and they got terrible writers for the main story. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. The lore is good, but unfortunately I never had time and patience at the time to go through it.
Yeah, it's not even just the lore, it's the side quests in general. Like,
yeah,
they can make the most generic side quests in this game interesting, except for the main guilds. The guilds in this game are terrible.
I know I tried doing the Thieves quest thing just to get the armor.
Well, I did almost all of them, and they all suck. There was one guild in particular that was so boring to me, I couldn't get past the first few missions, and that was the Mage Guild. And I'll tell you, even the most hardcore Skyrim fans think that's one of the worst guilds in Bethesda history, and there's a reason. It's just so boring. And there are so many people who complained about the Thieves Guild, and I have to agree, it's the worst in the series. I mean, Oblivion had pretty good guilds, considering. when you compare it to Skyrim.
Where are you?
Uh, like the Thieves Guild in Oblivion was epic.
Over here.
It was amazing
Yeah.
because you really did feel like a thief. And the Assassin's Guild, I forget what it's called. To be
Dark
honest.
Brotherhood. Isn't
Yeah, the
it?
Dark Brotherhood is a lot better in Oblivion than Skyrim. Other than that, both of them had pretty bad guilds, but I think Oblivion has slightly better guilds in general than Skyrim.
Yeah.
But
oh,
yeah.
Go.
no, I was just saying, but yeah.
Oh, okay. And like, I only did the Thieves, and I think I did a bit of the Dark Brotherhood, but I wasn't really too interested. And
Yeah.
Oh, here's the main theme of Ocarina of Time kind of going off.
I wish I could hear it. I can't hear it.
It's so wonderful. It's the title theme.
You know, I'm listening to
That
right
game
now.
is so much better than this. It's not even an RPG.
Yeah.
You know what? I
Well,
might just go
yeah.
play that right now. Like, dude, yeah.
I think it's funny how everyone, like, no one understands anymore the definition of an RPG. It's so annoying.
It's convoluted.
Like, people, yeah, I know it's a hard genre to understand, but it's not that hard when you think about it. Like, people think The Legend of Zelda they're voting it the best RPG of 2015.
What, you serious?
It's an action adventure game.
Oh my god.
It doesn't even have that many RPG elements.
It's also with that, like, okay, I'm getting off topic here, but it's also like that with horror games.
Yeah.
Like, someone put Bioshock on, like, scariest games. I was like, what the hell? That's not even scary. It's a bit creepy, but not scary.
It's stupid too because it's similar to Bioshock. People look at the art design and the weapons that are used in the game and they say, oh, that must be an RPG. It has swords in it, so it's an RPG. Devil's Third is an action game exclusive to the Wii U where you use guns and swords, and it's basically Metal Gear Rising on crack with multiplayer. You're telling me that because Zelda has swords that's an RPG? Well, I guess Devil's Third is an RPG too. You know, I guess Gears of War is because your blade is basically an RPG. It's, I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it's stupid. Like, people look at Bioshock and say it's a horror game because of the art design. That's not what makes a game a certain type of game.
Or, like, for example, people think even the original System Shock games, and okay, some of the advertisement says it's a shooter, but really it's more of an RPG game.
Wait, which game?
System Shock. Because, okay.
Wait, did you say it's a shooter? That doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Because on, like, a box art, it was like shooter, like, it actually says it's like a first-person shooter or whatever, like RPG and stuff. But really, it's more of an RPG game with it says it's a shooter, and it kind of is, but it's more of an RPG game. That's what it is, mostly. It's an RPG game, mostly. And it acts more like a JRPG because the action really don't affect overall in the end. Because you just get the same ending no matter what.
Yeah.
But all the elements in the game, like you leveling up and stuff, getting those upgrades, how everything works, it's like an RPG. And
Yeah.
you do feel like you are the character because the guy doesn't talk. So,
Well,
yeah.
and I think it's hard because in System Shock, wait, you're talking about System Shock, right?
Yeah. And, like,
Yeah.
feel immersed in this world because you get these data logs because there's no people around. You kind of got this feeling of like lone, like isolation in a way. You feel so isolated from everything, and there's only these creatures attacking you and stuff, or even like the robots.
Well, here's something you have to consider, Seth. If you cannot change the world around you in meaningful ways, then is it really an RPG? Like, I haven't played System Shock, so I can't talk about it. But if there's no different ending, if there's no choices in the game, then it's probably an action adventure game
Because
with huge RPG elements.
yeah, I mean, that's like you could choose like how you're gonna do a thing. Like, okay, you can try to go in guns blazing, but you're gonna die unless somehow you hacked into the console command with a bunch of like ammo.
Yeah, I don't know how to comment on that, honestly.
Yeah.
But like, you know, you can
Like, or-
same thing with
oh, yeah.
Dishonored though.
Yeah.
Which is why the RPG genre is so convoluted. But like I said, on paper, if you understand the definition of a tabletop RPG,
Yeah.
it's not hard at all to understand what an RPG is. Games
It's
like
just
Final
hard-
Fantasy
yeah.
aren't RPGs, they're JRPGs, which are basically just action adventure games with strategy games and with RPG elements.
Exactly.
It's confusing, but
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense once you realize it. And it's kind of like I'm trying to think of it right now. Oh crap, I forgot. But so is there anything else we need to talk about this game?
You know
are we
what?
gonna do ratings?
Yeah, we are. And okay, I'm gonna rate this game. Okay, now this is significantly different than my original rating.
10 out of 10.
Yeah. I was kind of stupid at that time, even though it was kind of recent.
You weren't stupid. You were just a fan. Which
Yeah.
nothing's wrong with that.
Yeah.
You have to understand the Elder Scrolls series as a whole is pretty good.
Mhm.
It's just it's had so many mediocre titles I kind of don't like it that much.
Yeah.
But
Overall, you know what? I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10. It's a great game.
a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. It's
don't
a
even
good
know if-
game.
I don't even know if that's a great game. That's like
It's a good game. It's a good game.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good game. Great game would be an 8. But yeah, it just lost appeal to me.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard for me to rate it because I was originally gonna rate it 7 out of 10, but when I put all the facts, all the problems on paper, it's so easy to want to hate on it. But you know, I have to be objective about it. You know, I can't be a hater. So I think a fair score is either 6 out of 10 or a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, and you know what? I'm gonna put a 7 for PC, and on consoles, I'm gonna put it at. Okay, you know what? This is probably being harsh, but like a 5. On console.
It depends on the console though, because the
Mainly on
360 version's
PS3.
pretty good. Yeah.
The 360, I'll give it a 6.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So I have. So is this the end of the review?
pretty much. So, if you like it, please rate, comment, subscribe. Oh, and Angry Gorilla has a channel as well.
Yeah, I don't have any videos yet, but first of all, let me just say, the review style in this review is a lot different from my review style. Mine is a bit more, calculated.
Scripted.
This is basically, yeah, mine's scripted, although I don't use scripts. And I don't even have any videos up yet, but I will be getting a capture card for Christmas, so look forward to that. And me and Seth are probably going to do a lot more reviews together if he doesn't mind. Just
I don't mind at
because-
all. Just,
Yeah,
It'll be fun.
it's just so fun to rant and,
yeah.
you know, and
Complaining about similar things or disagreeing
Yeah,
about things.
yeah,
It makes it more interesting.
it does, especially since Seth in general, he likes a lot more games and he has a lot more games than
Yeah.
I do. So it's really interesting. I'm probably not going to review stuff with him that I don't know about unless I know a lot about the game
Yeah.
without playing it.
Both of us love Halo to death.
Yeah, you know, and I wish he would play Dark Souls.
I can't
So
get into it. I just can't.
Well, it's
not my
kind-
cup of tea.
Well, to be fair though, it was kind of my fault. I gave you bad directions and you died because of it.
Yeah.
I think you need to watch the Dark Souls guide, buddy.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch it until a while. And you know
Yeah.
one game I really want to play, but I just don't have the time, kind of.
My
and
butt
I
cheeks?
don't know how to find it. No. It's Shadow of Colossus.
Oh, I want to
have
play that
to
so
play
badly.
that. So yeah, this is the end of the review. Please comment,
Yeah.
comment, rate, subscribe. It's me, Man Bat, and Angry Gorilla. We are out, and oh yeah, join our clan. So see ya.